Jesus Christ, where do I even begin with this dude? There are so many things wrong with him. His voice.
Stop it! Stop beating me so much! Holy crap!
How much he charges for basic shit. His everyone needs to have their attention on me at all times attitude. His VR chat avatar. Like seriously, how are you gonna scam someone out of $500 to play VR chat for 20 minutes with you and still have a god-awful looking avatar? Trust me when I say this, but there is definitely a problem with April Fools! A couple of months after April Fool's Day ended. You know, now that I think about it, secretly working on this video while pretending like I'm not working on any side projects near the end of March wasn't a good idea. Well, anyways, I'm not talking about Garo in this video, and it's mostly because I don't want to have to watch a bunch of his videos to pick what clips show how attention-starved he is, and have to hear him talk.
Gross and yumsies. More yumsies.
Wow, a gun! I wonder if it's loaded. No.
Instead, I'm going to be talking about my favorite game series ever, Dying Light. Now, I'm going to go ahead and be a brown-nosed to Techland for a bit, but they make the best zombie survival games. We do not talk about that one. Dead Island is one of their first zombie survival games I've ever played, and I loved it. By 2011 standards, the combat and story were great, and the game itself can get pretty terrifying by yourself. And then 4 years later, Dying Light came out, and it was so good that when I bought it a couple of years after it came out, I would end up playing it all the way until Dying Light 2 came out in 2022. Yeah, it was that fun. I love both Dying Light games so much that I'm here to tell you the beauty of Dying Light 1 and 2. Both Dying Light games are great. Yeah, the second one's story got a bit confusing at times, but they are both still great games, and I definitely recommend you buy both of them. Before we get into talking about Dying Light, I want to go ahead and slap a spoiler warning onto the screen right here. I'm not going to go over the entire story of both of them, but I will end up talking about parts of the games that contain spoilers, so I just want to go ahead and warn everyone watching this video, if you care about spoilers for any of these games, I suggest you play the games first, and then watch the videos. But anyways, let's start off with Dying Light was released January 6, 2015, and was continuously kept relevant by the awesome updates and the DLC Dying Light the Following for 7 years until its sequel came out. That is a lot longer of a life cycle than most games have, and it's due to its replayability. I literally did every single side quest, found every single developer blueprint, and I still had a blast even after doing all of that. I am not kidding whenever I say that I had been playing Dying Light for almost 7 years. Hell, I'm playing Dying Light for the background footage, and I can guarantee I'm still having fun doing it. Anyways, enough brown-nosing for now. Let me go ahead and give you a bit of a summary of the game's story. Just remember, spoiler alert for Dying Light. So if you somehow never played it and care about the story for this game, don't watch beyond this point. You play as Kyle Crane, voiced by one of my favorite voice actors, Roger Craig Smith, a GRE operative who is being sent into the infection-ravaged city of Haran to find Kadir Suleiman, who has files that he stole from the GRE. After landing, Kyle gets attacked by members of Rise's men, where he gets bit after alerting the infected towards his location with a gun he has. He gets rescued by the people of the tower, and is told about Rise, who actually turns out to be Suleiman. He later makes a deal with Rise for 2 crates of Antizin, a medicine that suppresses the virus, only for Rise to short Crane and only give him 5 vials for the entire population of the tower. Dr. Zare is later kidnapped by Rise's men, and after Crane goes to rescue him, Crane is captured and is forced to fight in a gladiatorial pit with biters, virals, and Mark Ruffalo. Kyle wins, chops off Rise's hand, and escapes the pit. He then travels to Old Town, where he meets another doctor who's working on a cure named Alan Camden. Rise leaks the information from the GRE files, which shows that the GRE was actually planning to weaponize the virus instead of cure it. Rise then makes a deal with the GRE where if he brings them the data containing the recipe for the cure, they will evacuate him out of Haran. Crane, of course, stops his escape with a quick-time event, killing him after winning due to his advantage of having 2 hands and being the main character. Now, obviously, that's just a quick summary of the game's plot. There's a lot more details, but I want to get to the actual gameplay. The game mixes both melee-based and parkour-based combat to fight zombies or bandits. This mixture allows you to pull off certain combos like drop-kicking an enemy and wailing on them while they try to get up. The game also has a skill tree that is split into 3 parts. Survivor, which pertains to crafting and using items to help you survive against hordes of the undead or even fall damage once you get the grappling hook. Agility, and this is one of the 2 more important ones, helps you out with parkour-based combat and even makes it to where performing parkour related things like sprinting or climbing takes no stamina whatsoever. The last skill tree is power, which is the second more important skill tree, since this is used to make melee based combat more powerful, especially once you get ultimate combatant, which gives you infinite combat stamina. Once you max out one of these skill trees, you gain access to the legend skill tree. Isn't really a tree, but more of like the special skill machine in Fallout New Vegas, where you put points into stuff like more health, more damage, or even health regeneration. Just remember though, the enemies level up with you, so as you get stronger, so do they. There are basically 4 weapon types in the game. Melee weapons are used for close encounters that have limited durability, along with a limited amount of times you can repair them before they become useless. Throwables are items that are, well, throwable, that can damage enemies or even just lure them away from your location. Firearms or long-range weapons include guns and bows. Guns do massive damage, especially to the head, but attract virals to your location. Bows, or crossbows if you have Dying Light the Following, have the same power of a gun, but the only drawback is when you pull the arrow back to shoot it. Get it? Because drawback is what you call pulling the string on a... You know what? Never mind. That joke was stupid. Bow and crossbow ammo can also be picked back up after you use them, unless they're special ammo like explosives or fire arrows. And of course, the 4th weapon type is yourself. Yeah, I know that sounds corny saying you are your best weapon, but in this game, it's true. Then, of course, you have your enemies, which can be separated into infected and bandits. Infected enemies have separate variants, some of them more dangerous than others. Biters are the basic bitch type that aren't that dangerous unless you get surrounded by a horde of them or try to fight a small group of them in tighter spaces. Virals are a bit more dangerous due to how they can actually climb buildings, dodge some attacks, and swing faster than biters. But because they are recently turned survivors, you can exploit the weakness they have where they stop attacking for a short moment after trying and failing to fight against the virus's urge to kill. Goons are slightly more mutated of biters that aren't only more tanky, but can hit you over the head with a bit of concrete covered rebar. Bombers are only dangerous when they are very close to you, since their main form of attacking is blowing themselves up like you're playing Minecraft. However, if you do manage to survive the blast after getting away in time, the explosion will alert virals to your location. Frogmen, yes, I know what they're actually called, but frogmen sounds a bit funnier than toads, spit acidic slime at you from either up close or from a range. Demolishers are very tanky Hulk monsters that will charge at you, swat you away like a bug, and even throw chunks of concrete at you if you're far enough away. They are the second most dangerous, but because they only show up during encounters or certain missions, you should be fine. Unless you're playing the following, because sometimes they're like Deathclaws in New Vegas and will just appear out of nowhere. Volatiles are the most dangerous type of infected. They're faster than virals, with the strength and damage resistance of a demolisher. They can pin you to the floor after tackling you, and also spit acid at you from long range, if you even get the chance to get far enough away from them to do so. Thankfully for us though, they are sensitive to UV light, so they only roam around at night. There are also bolters and screamers, but they don't really attack the player. Instead, they either run away or call virals to their location. Bandits don't really have separate variants, other than whether or not they work for Rise, but they do have some that makes them a bit more dangerous than the infected. They aren't stupid. Not as stupid, anyway. Bandits can block, dodge, and even hold guns, and they aren't stupid enough to be lured away from you with firecrackers during a fight. Best way to fight them is to grapple them when they lunge at you, and beat them up while they are stunned. Or just shoot them. And then, of course, there's the environment. Unless you're playing Dying Light the Following, the environment is made in a way to where you can stay on top of buildings for a decent amount of time, and some of the buildings are spaced far enough apart for you to either make the jump or grapple your way across the gap. Biters, because they can't climb buildings, populate the ground more often, making running across rooftops more safe and running through the streets a bit more dangerous. With the few amount of biters that do exist on the roof, it's always fun to watch them fly down to the ground after dropkicking them. However, the roofs aren't always safe, since in the slums area there are roofs that collapse if you land on them and attract virals. You can also unlock safe zones, whether it's as easy as killing a few infected and turning the power on, or as difficult as climbing a tall radio tower and turning the power on. Safe zones are important and should be completed as quickly as possible, not only for a safer nighttime exploration, but also for respawn points when you accidentally fall off of a building. There are also random events, shown on the minimap by a radio signal symbol that could be several different things. A survivor being attacked by the infected, 2 survivors doing a boss battle, shops, and escort missions. There are also random events that just have a survivor telling their story about being in Haran, but after hearing every single one of them, I just started lighting them on fire and looting their bodies. There are also random drops, where you have to pick up drop packages that give you extra XP after giving them to the quartermaster. But after a certain point in the story, they stop dropping, and then these events become exclusive to the following. There are also random encounters for nighttime, but it's mostly only to hunt down a bolter. So what makes Dying Light a great game? Well, it's mostly its characters, story, and combat pacing, where you're not too overpowered, but you're also not getting used as a mop by enemies. Hell, the only character that I thought wasn't all that good was actually Rise. He has the basic mentality of sheep versus wolves, and it makes me wonder if he has a MAGA hat somewhere in his room. Yeah, I get he had a tragic backstory where his brother died, but he's still basic. Dying Light also shows that not everyone just gets a happy ending. Techland is really good at showing how bleak the situation of a zombie apocalypse actually is. Kind of like the ending of Dead Island Riptide, where it shows that the survivors are most likely infected and worse than most of the zombies that are in that game. Yeah, in the ending of Dying Light, it seems like everything's gonna be okay and that a cure is coming. But then Dying Light the Following came along. The cure was taking longer than expected, and some dude arrives from Haran's countryside saying that there are people who are completely immune to the virus, and after fighting through hordes of zombies, Crane finds out that that was only partly true. They are immune to the virus, but only because the medicine they inhale on a daily basis is slowly turning them into something even worse than a volatile. After you learn of this from the mother, a sentient volatile who was turned after drinking the chemicals in the vials, gives you the choice to cleanse Haran of the virus. Hiroshima style. If you accept, the mother will lead you into a back room and you'll activate a nuke, destroying Haran, Kyle, and the virus in the blink of an eye. If you refuse to nuke Haran, you'll fight the mother, kill her, and manage to escape Haran's walls, only to turn into a sentient volatile and doom the world outside of Haran, which is the canon ending. Both endings end with Crane either dying or turning into a volatile or Night Hunter, depending on what you believe, I guess. The happiest ending he'll get is one where he is alive, but he's also a monster that can't control himself at night. Dying Light 2 does this as well, but we'll wait a bit to talk about that. Another example is with a side quest named Gunslinger, where you help Dawood escape to Old Town by providing him with a gun. However, he uses said gun to kidnap his son, leave his wife at the tower, and go to Old Town while Crane is out looting the pawn shop for an action figure he was sent to get. When you eventually get to Old Town, you'll get a radio broadcast from Dawood saying he was turning and for someone to save his son. When you get to the apartment, Dawood has turned into a viral and you have to kill him while his son is hidden inside of a closet nearby. The amount of main and side characters that die or turn in this game alone shows the overall message that the survivors will only get 2 types of endings. Death, or a bittersweet one. Okay, enough of the sad and tragic stuff. Here's some footage of Tolga and Fatin, 2 genius Turkish brothers who are the funniest characters in the game.
Got to hold the button.
Good to see you again, Mr. What's his name?
Crane, like the mindless machine that lifts heavy things.
Maybe he'll move if we look away.
You're going to use a train as a battering ram with you inside, really?
Our plan is flawless.
There are also a shit ton of things you can do after beating both Dying Light and Dying Light the Following. Find the developer blueprints scattered across both games. Finish all of the side quests. Do the Haran prison challenge. But best of all, Dying Light has special events. That included Super Dropkick mode, an event where you help Spike get survivors to a safe place away from Rise's men. They even recently announced an event for their last update for Dying Light where you can do bounties for Tolga and Fatin, and can receive a special gun. There are also custom game modes you can play that are made by random people online, one of which I actually played for YouTube. But I believe the main reason Dying Light is one of the best games out there is due to its constant support from Techland. Most game devs will release a game and it'll stop receiving support after a couple of years. But Techland was supporting Dying Light for 7 years while also working on their sequel. Once again, Techland is one of the most goated game devs ever. Dying Light has a lot going for it, with its events, story, combat, and characters, and I cannot even begin to tell you how excited I was when they revealed Dying Light 2 was released February 4th, 2022, which is literally the day after my birthday. Now, I will admit that it did have a bit of a shaky release. Sound bugs, the game crashing every once in a while, and a few other bugs that I personally didn't experience. But something nobody realized is that Dying Light 2 was made by Techland and not Sledgehammer Games. They almost immediately started releasing updates to fix the game-breaking bugs. Yeah, there's still some bugs left, but they're so minor now that I personally don't notice them. I think the only bug I saw while playing after New Game Plus was when I did a takedown on a Renegade and their body started freaking out because it landed inside of a generator. In this game, you play as Aiden Caldwell, who is voiced by Jonah Scott, not Roger Craig Smith like most people think. I'm sorry for yelling. They do sound similar sometimes, I will admit that, but it's not Roger. Aiden travels to Villador to find his sister Mia, who he lost after escaping the GRE research laboratory he was experimented on. You are given a GRE access key by Dylan in order to keep it safe from Waltz, the main antagonist of Dying Light 2, who was in charge of conducting experiments on the kids in the GRE laboratory. Most of the plot, though, is hard to summarize due to the different choices you can make, which we'll talk about later on. Some of the newer mechanics in Dying Light 2 make this game fantastic. Inhibitors, which can be found in random spots across the map, in GRE facilities, after fighting a GRE anomaly, or from completing subway stations, can be used to increase your health or stamina, and also your immunity level. By the way, don't go into GRE facilities during the day. Trust me.
Well, howdy there, partner. You done came in the wrong goddamn place at the wrong goddamn time. I suggest you leave before I kick your ass back to New York.
In both games, the character you play as is infected by the virus, but both games' viruses work differently from each other. In the first game, the virus worked as normal, in the sense that it slowly attacks your body until you turn. There is no cure, but there is a suppressant called antizin that basically delays the infection from taking you over. It's essentially Zombrex from the Dead Rising series. Unlike Zombrex, however, you didn't have to actively collect them in Dying Light in order to stay alive. In fact, it seems like the infection only affects your character or other characters when the plot calls for it. That's where it's vastly different from Dying Light 2's infection. In Dying Light 2, the only suppressant for the infection is UV light, whether from the sun or a UV light bulb, which makes nighttime a lot more dangerous and stress-inducing. Not only do you have to avoid the virals, howlers, and volatiles that roam around at night, you're also on a time limit for when you have to get to a place with UV lights. Yeah, mushrooms, immunity boosters, and UV bars also exist, but they are limited and you can either run out of them or run out of the supplies to make them. If you want my advice, do as many windmills or Night Runner hideouts as you can as quickly as possible. The skill tree in Dying Light 2 has changed, in my opinion, for the better. There are only two skill trees now, combat and parkour. As the name suggests, the skill trees pertain to your combat or parkour abilities, some of which you have to find inhibitors to unlock since you have to have a certain amount of health or stamina for them. Another change is that there are no guns. Well, sort of. Instead, it's only melee weapons, bows, and a crossbow if you put enough factions into the Peacekeepers. The combat has also changed, where blocking and dodging attacks are needed a bit more to win fights. Essentially, more strategy is required. Blocking a human enemy's attack at the right time will temporarily stun them, giving you a chance to vault over them and kick their teammates across the world. The enemies have also changed pretty drastically. However, you do still have your two basic enemies, humans and the infected. Bandits are pretty simple. They're just normal people who either roam around, attempt to loot survivor caches, or are found beating someone to death in the middle of the street. Renegades, however, are basically bandits, but they travel in packs and roid rage like vegan gains.
So if you think you have the fucking guts, come to the fucking Toronto Veg Fest!
They travel in groups of 4 or 5 and are a slight bit stronger. The infected are split into different types, much like the first game, but with some different variations. Biters and virals are the same, except that virals of course run faster and actively move around in dark zones. They can also get stunned by sunlight for a few moments during the day. Howlers are a new zombie type that only exists during nighttime. If you get too close to one or are too slow to kill one, they'll let out a scream that will put you into a chase. The longer you get chased for, the more dangerous the chase gets, with volatiles eventually chasing after you. But you get the reward of extra XP for both parkour and combat XP. Banshees are a new infected type that mostly relies on parkour to fight. This thing will jump off of anything to attack you. Cars, buildings, billboards, even other zombies will get used as a trampoline. This is a bit of a spoiler, but the Banshee is actually from one of Dying Light 2's comics titled I Am the Cure, that shows how the infection was started. In that comic, the Banshee actually has a formula for the cure in her locket. Whenever I read this, I thought it would somehow come up in the game, but it never does, and that was kind of underwhelming. Spitters are also a new variant. They're basically frogmen from Dying Light, but they are very sensitive to UV light, so they only exist in dark zones or at nighttime. Bombers still explode. That's pretty much it. Goons are also the same as their original counterpart, but this time you can't take the rebar from their corpse as a weapon of your own because it's fused into their arm. There are also elemental versions of the goon, but you can only find them in New Game Plus with the mission Something Big Was Here, which kinda sucks. But if you complete this mission, you actually get a Goon Smasher, which sends zombies flying. Chargers are another new variant that, well, charges at you. Something that Left 4 Dead 2 would shamelessly steal 13 years before this. The only way you can damage it is by hitting the obvious weak point on its back, which is easy to hit when you cause it to slam into the wall. Demolishers also make a comeback, and they are just as deadly. Their appearance did change a bit though, with their faces looking more volatile-esque, since they are a mutation of them in this game. Volatiles are still just as dangerous. Maybe even a bit more. They can take more damage, do more damage, they don't even get stunned most of the time. Hell, I think the only easy way to kill them is with the highest damage bow in the game, or block charging them off of a tall enough building. Revenants are the last new enemy type, and they are exclusive to the nighttime in specific locations on the map called GRE anomaly locations. After you kill them, you get access to 2 inhibitors, or a crystal if you got all of the inhibitors before playing on New Game Plus. Random events do still exist, but with some new and different variations. Some of the returning ones are saving survivors from infected, bolters, and boss battles, but some new ones include survivors being taken hostage, low immunity survivors at night, or during the day once it gets to a certain point in the game, muggers, or one of my favorite ones, ambushes. See that red crate over there? I bet you want to go over there and open it to see what kind of treasures reside in it, right? Well, that's exactly what the bandits want you to do, because as soon as you get close to it, 3 or 4 bandits come out and ambush you, using the crate as bait. The first time I had this encounter, it honestly caught me off guard when I bent down to unlock the crate, and a bunch of diamonds popped up on my screen and bandits rushed towards me. One last new mechanic in Dying Light 2 is the freedom of choice. Kind of. The way the game's world is shaped is dependent on your choices. If you decide APAB, all peacekeepers are bastards, and give every water tower or electrical station to the survivors, you can get parkour-based rewards like jump pads, 2-way zip lines, or even the ability for survivors to pick you back up if you end up dying to gravity in the zones they control. If you decide you like the taste of boots and give the PKs control, you'll be rewarded with combat-based stuff like card traps, razor cannons, and the aforementioned crossbow. Other than those though, most of the choices you make only seem to actually matter at the end of the game. And this is one of the things I'm not really a fan of in this game. Here's an instance of what I mean by not mattering, and once again, major spoiler alert. In my New Game Plus run, I sided with the PK, and I thought after we helped the PK, we'd get to completely skip the fight against Waltz and go straight through. But instead, the survivors still end up blowing the main windmill, and the easy way to the central loop still gets closed off. The only things that really change is that you have to fight a lot more infected in one choice, and how Anderson dies. I don't even get how the survivors managed to do it without Aiden helping them, because when you side with the survivors, Aiden needs to climb to the very top of the windmill to successfully blow it up. And no offense with a ton of offense to any of the survivors at the bazaar, but none of them really seem adept at climbing that shit. Even I was having trouble doing it. I mean, I guess they needed a way for Waltz to get a hold of the GRE access key to turn on the power in the city, but there definitely could have been a better way to do so. Like, make it to where Waltz intercepts Aiden while going through the access tunnel, and he gets taken to the car factory to witness something spectacular, and then the mission carries out as normal. Is it the best way to do it? No, not really, but it's better than what they did. Dying Light 2 also has community events, including an event where you can collect rarer crystals, a blue moon event where you don't have to worry about maintaining your immunity at night, and, as of writing this script and shown in the background footage for this section, an event where weapons and parkour attacks can send enemies flying across the map. Plus, there are some great Easter eggs in the game, from graffiti art or posters referencing Dying Light characters, to my personal favorite developer weapon, the Pan of Destiny. This shit is so fun to spam on enemies, oh my god. They even more recently released a new Easter egg weapon where you can throw saw blades at enemies. Now, remember how earlier I said that Techland is really good at showing how happy endings don't just happen? Dying Light 2 really delves into that narrative, both with the main story and the side quests. There's a side quest named The Breadwinner, where a kid asks you to go to the Forsaken store to find backpacks filled with food he was getting for his parents. After you get the backpacks, you go to the kid's home to bring him the supplies and find out that both of his parents are biters. Here's another big warning for spoilers, so turn back now if you don't want to hear them. Depending on your choices, Villador either gets destroyed or is spared, but also depending on your choices, different people will still suffer in some way. Not even Aiden gets a happy ending. Mia, who wasn't even actually his sister, dies at the end, and he has to leave Villador either way due to his own condition of turning into something probably worse than a volatile worsening over time. For all we know, Aiden eventually dies outside of Villador and, depending on your choices, ends up killing either Lawan or Hakon. There's also a really cool Easter egg where you can find the location from the cinematic trailer for Dying Light 2. You can see both the corpses of the women the survivor left to die and the corpse of the survivor himself, the UV lamp he stole from them, on the ground next to him. Before I finish up on talking about Dying Light 2, I do want to talk about Waltz's unique character design and the music in the game. When I first encountered Waltz in the tunnel on my first playthrough, he just seemed like your basic egotistical and cocky villain that's in a lot of games. But after I finished the game, my opinion definitely changed. During some cutscenes near the end, there are flashbacks with Waltz, and he seems very different back then than he does now. And it took me that to realize that the reason he's like this is a mixture of being struck with grief from his daughter's worsening condition and the inhibitors he keeps injecting into himself at every possible moment. Now, does that make him a better antagonist than Voss from Far Cry 3? No, far from it. It's very hard to top Voss's character. But it does make him a better antagonist than Rise from the first game. The music in Dying Light 2 is beautiful, especially the music that's in the menu and when you first arrive at the bazaar after the mission Markers of Plague, titled Run, Jump, Fight. The song is by Oliver D, and it is performed by the London Contemporary Orchestra, and it is such a great song. If I could play it right now in the video, I would. I like it so much that I put it on my Spotify playlist, and I have yet to skip it when it comes up. Another thing about the music in this game is that the volume of it will change while doing certain parkour actions. Here's what I mean by that. I love the idea of dynamic music, and it is definitely well done in Dying Light 2. All in all, I really do enjoy both Dying Light and Dying Light 2. Both of them have a great story and gameplay, and are pretty popular with a lot of content creators. 8-Bit Ryan, for example, actually makes an appearance in Dying Light 2 as a peacekeeper who's into mixology.
I'm contemplating a bold new direction in distilled arts, but sadly, I'm not able to serve you right now.
And seeing that made me have hope that Pyrocynical eventually gets a cameo in the game. But which game do I like more? Well, if I have to be honest, I would say that I like Dying Light a bit more than Dying Light 2. However, my opinion will most likely change after a while, since Dying Light 2 still has a lot more content coming to the game, including a whole new DLC story. Don't get me wrong though, Dying Light 2 is a great game, but it definitely has its flaws. Like how Aiden doesn't dodge a single fucking punch throughout the game. Aiden, holy fuck, man! I was going to talk about Dying Light the following, but to be honest, I wasn't as much of a fan of that game. It's mostly due to how it's less about parkour and more about cosplaying as Dom Toretto in a zombie apocalypse. I don't hate it, but it's definitely not as fun as the other two. When I don't feel like playing Vanguard or TF2, I always enjoy hopping into Dying Light 2 and bashing some heads in, looking cool while doing it. And that is the BEAUT of Dying Light 1 and 2. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And I also do want to apologize to y'all for lying about this being a video about the problem with GaroShadowScale. Will I do a video on him? Probably not, honestly. This video is my first video game essay video that was actually meant for April Fool's Day, but I got a bit panicky while reading the original script because it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. And instead of being rational and redoing it while using the OG script as a baseline, I deleted it and every single thing that I already made, and I had to completely restart it. Either way, I do still hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace! Also, quick question. Does anyone really care that Lawan is a different color than she was in the trailer? Because I really don't. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah. 24/7, 365. Waited too long, now it's my shine. I'm stunning when I'm running in the limelight. You steady running your mouth, cause I rhyme tight. 24/7, 365. Waited too long, now it's...
Hey, hang on, Carter. I think I know how to take this guy down. Among Us.